Hi there, I'm Tracy. Thank you so much for joining me. You could say I'm a professional upcycler. I've been selling my upcycled items for pretty much my whole entire adult life, and clothing, purses, accessories for well over 10 years. Well, I've retired from selling. We have an RV, I just want a little R&R and a little travel time, but I am doing tutorials for you, showing you things that I've made over the years that sold, tips and tricks of things I've taught myself. I could never find tutorials like this back when I started. So fashion gurus are saying fabric rosettes are the trend of 2023. And that's exciting to me because I was making flowers when flowers weren't cool. But if I was still selling, I would be jumping on that bandwagon. And I'm going to show you a bunch of ideas today, along with quite an extensive slideshow at the end of this, because I have been doing flowers for years and years. I love them. I love anything floral. So we're going to start with this brooch that I made and sold a while back. And it won't be exactly like this, but this will give you the basic ideas. We're going to do one basic flower and tweak it a bunch of different ways and implement it a bunch of different ways. And so we're going to do a denim jacket, another sort of choker, a long necklace, more. So let's get rolling. I'm going to start by making the main pink flower of the brooch. And I am using this velvet shirt. I cut off the bottom, and I have a strip now that is 35 inches by 4 inches, I believe. Yep, 35 by 4. That's what I'm starting with to make my flower. Okay, so here's my velvet. And on the opposite side is this kind of ugly, hot pink. Well, when you make these flowers, you will see both sides of the fabric. So I don't want to see this side. So I am going to fold it in half. And I'm going to put the raw edges together. Now keep this technique in mind, because there are 3 different ways. You can fold it like this and use the folded end as the outside, or you can use the raw edge, or you don't have to fold it at all, but I will show you all those techniques. So this is one. This is where we see the folded edge on the outside of the flower. So now that I have that folded in half, I'm going to take this corner and fold it down like this. Now this will be the bottom here. Now I could stick a pin in there if I want, but it would only be temporary. And you can do it if you want. I'm not going to do it. What I'm going to do is just take a needle and thread. This is doubled and knotted at the bottom, about the length of my strip, not quite. And I'm going to match as closely as I can to the fabric. Now, at this end, where the point is, I'm just going to put the needle and thread in a couple times so it's nice and sturdy. And now all I do is go in and out all the way down about 1/2 inch stitch lengths and about 1/2 inch apart. Now, this will be a fairly large flower. Smaller flowers, you might want to make your stitch lengths closer and smaller. And so I will just go all the way down, making sure I catch both ends here of the raw edges. This will eventually be gathered, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. Okay, so I'll just finish going all the way down to the end. Okay, now that I'm down at the end, I am just going to gather this. Now, how tight you want to gather this is up to you. I do it fairly close, but I don't usually ever do it super tight. So about like this. And now at this end, I just need to tie this off so that this stays in this shape. And I will just make a little knot and I'm going to do it twice just to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay, and now we have the start of our little flower. Now, I could have probably done that a little bit tighter. Some I do tight, some I don't. It just depends on sort of the look I'm going for. Now, here's the thread and needle. It's still attached right here. I'm just going to drop that because I'm going to use that in a little bit. Now, this is the end that we folded over. I want that to be the center of my flower. So I need to wind this around, but I want to start at the opposite end, not at the side where we folded it over. So this will be my bottom, and I'm just going to start winding this around. Now each layer I want smaller than the outside layer. I want it inside. See, there's the outside. And I'm trying to keep these little pleat things that we sewed sort of in the center. You know, you just need to maybe practice or play with it a little bit to try to get the look you want. I've had to redo these. I've wound them up and didn't like it and redid it. So that's what we have so far. Now, the reason I kept this thread attached, I will need more than this to sew this flower together, but this just helps to hold it initially in place. So now what I'll do is I'll just take my needle and thread and I'll go up from the bottom and out from the top. And to make them secure, this will take quite a bit of stitching, especially if you make it for like a purse or something where it gets kind of manhandled. You want it nice and secure. Now, when I go back in, I want to go very close to that thread that I just came out with and back to the bottom. Now on the bottom, you can go anywhere you want because you're really not going to see that. If you're making a brooch, you'll want to try to stay pretty close to the center so those threads are hidden once you make the brooch. So I will just take pieces, you know, just in and out until I feel it's secure. And when I'm done with this thread, I'm going to reload my needle. And this is a time when you can kind of shape your flower as well. If you have a piece that's sticking out way too far, tuck it in and sew it. Okay, so here's my flower, and I want to embellish the center, and I'm going to use this vintage, which I think was a pendant, possibly an earring, I don't know. But I'm going to set this right in the center, and I will stitch probably this hole or this space right here. You know, you just want to find gaps that your needle and thread can go through that are sort of inconspicuous. So I'll probably stitch it here and maybe like right here at the top, and then maybe in the center if I feel like it's not secure enough. So I'll just lay this how I like maybe about right there. Now, when I sew jewelry onto flowers or anything else, I try to typically match the color of the hardware of the jewelry. Like this is gold, so I'll use this gold colored thread. It's not metallic, and I'll use that to sew. And so all I'll do is, once I have it sort of positioned how I want it, I will just come up through the bottom and try to get close to the area I want to sew, and just keep going from front to back in that same spot. I'll probably do this like 4 times in one spot and then move over to the next, and do that about 4 times. Okay, I'm just going to get that little flower sewn on. Now I have that nice and secure, and I'm just going to tie it off in the back somewhere. I usually make 2 knots to make it secure. I'll make a loop, go around twice, pull it tight, do it again. Make a loop, go around twice, pull it tight, clip it off. Okay, I'm just sort of gathering and making parts for this brooch before I get into the assembly of the brooch. And now I want 2 flowers that look like this. I've already made this one, and I'll show you how I did that. This is a little bit of a different technique using the same sort of pleating and scrunching concept. Okay, but this one is a ribbon, and it's not going to be folded like I did the velvet. So here's the ribbon. It's 16.5 inches long and about 1 inch wide. And what I did was I found a tablecloth that had a little bit of a scalloped edge, and I cut that to approximately the same size. And I'm going to lay that right on top, lining up the bottom. So this will be the bottom. And now, let me thread a needle and I'll show you how I get this started. I'm using this color thread. And so I threaded double the thread with a knot at the bottom, and it's a little bit, maybe 4 inches longer than this piece of ribbon. Okay, so I have the bottom all lined up, and again, I'll fold this corner down, and then at this corner, I'll take my needle and thread, and I'll go in and out of it twice just to make it secure. And I'll do the same thing. Do fairly large stitching all the way down so that we can scrunch it up. Now I'll go a little bit smaller with my stitching here, maybe 1/4 of an inch long and 1/4 of an inch apart. But I'm catching both that lace and the ribbon right at the bottom, as close to the bottom as I can get it. And I'll go all the way down to the end. Okay, so now I just need to scrunch this up. Now this ribbon's a little bit stiffer than my velvet was, so I'm going to try to do this. It's going to take a little more pressure, and I'm going to try to do this without breaking the thread. And I'm going to pull this one a little bit tighter than I did the velvet. Okay. And now when I get to the end, I'm just going to double knot that so that it doesn't straighten back out on me. You can do this with any kind of ribbon, you know, even lace ribbon, satin ribbon. Okay, now I'm just going to play with it and try to get all that pleating sort of even. And I still have my thread hanging here. That will be the bottom. And I just have to wrap it around like I did the velvet. I think that looks pretty good. Now once I have it where I want it, I'm just going to start sewing up from the back to the front, back down, just like we did the velvet one. Okay, I'll get this finished up and come back. We got a little pearl to put in the middle. So these little flowers have a pearl bead center, And it's just from a broken necklace, and I want to put one in the center of this. And I'm going to use my gold thread that I've been using, and I'll just come up from the back, bring my needle through, slip my bead onto my needle, and go over about maybe 1/4 of an inch from where the thread originally came through the top. And now it's in the back. Come back up near the hole. Since this is a big pearl, pretty big, I'll probably go through it about 4 times, 3 or 4. Sometimes I just have to judge how secure it feels. Go through the holes of the pearl and go back down. And I'll do that a couple more times and tie it off in the back. Okay, so now I want to create sort of the brooch, the foundation with which to apply all these flowers and fringes and things like that. So I went to Amazon and I bought felt, and this is, I believe, $5.95 for 40 pieces, multicolor. You know, if you're just making a couple, definitely it's cheaper to just go to your craft store, fabric store, and buy a couple pieces of felt that match your project. But this is what I'm using. And I'm also using these, they're just brooch backs. And these are iron, and they're 1.5 inches long. These are one of the longer ones because these flowers are sort of big, you know, and they have that brooch clasp right there. Okay, so I'm going to be using the felt, the brooch backs. I'll put this, these parts, the felt and the brooch backs, in my description, the Amazon link. And I'm also going to use some glasses and different sizes depending on how big my brooch is. If I'm just doing a single, fairly small flower, see, I have to make a round piece out of the felt, and I need something to trace around. And so a shot glass, the top of it is nice for a small flower to put it on your felt and trace around. Here's sort of a drinking water glass for a larger flower. Now I have multiple flowers, so I'm going to be using this sort of drinking glass as my pattern. And at the widest part, it's 3 inches across. I'm using sort of a creamy off-white piece of felt. And I will just put my glass down and take a pencil, trace around it, and cut it out. Super simple, right? Okay, so now I need to cut 2 little holes for this brooch back to go into. So I'm setting it on my circle towards the top. When you have like a big flower or something heavy, you want to place the pin towards the top so that it doesn't flop over. And so I will have it about there, sort of centered. Flip it over so I can mark. You know, it's approximately in the center. And so I'm just going to make a tiny little dash with my pencil where these 2 ends right here are, so I know where to cut. Okay, so now I have those 2 little dots. Now I will just fold this over and just snip a teeny little bit right at those marks. It's better to go too small at first. You can always make it bigger. Okay, so now I have 2 little slits cut. Okay, so now what I want to do is open up my pin, and I'm going to slip one side. I'm going to do it where I have the markings. That way they're hidden underneath. And I'm going to slide the pin and this whole piece of hardware all the way through that slit. Now I may need to cut that a little bigger, but let's see. Okay, well that didn't go in super smooth. Okay, so I have one end in. Now on the back, here is the other end I need to put it through, but before I put it through there, I'm going to cut that slit a little bigger so I don't struggle with it like I just did. Okay, before I stick that in, what I want to do is take my glue gun and I'm just going to make a little line of glue between those dots to hold the pin. So I'll stick that through on the front and then just press that down into the glue on the back. Okay, so now I'm just going to close this up so that that pin doesn't flop all over and poke me or get in the way. Okay, so that's what the back of the brooch will look like. Now we need to work on the front to assemble the brooch. Okay, here's my brooch. Probably hard to see this white on white. Before I add the flowers, I want to add the fringe because then the flowers will overlap the fringe. And I am going to glue all mine on, but you can definitely sew yours on. What you would want to do is line up all the fringe and just make a straight stitch across the fringe. You would want to do this on something that you're going to wash, like if you were putting this onto a shirt, or say it's not a brooch. If you want to assemble something like this and have it permanently on a shirt or even on a purse, I use no glue. So I would sew this and just make a straight stitch across the fringe, but I'm going to glue this. So what I have here is just sort of a scrap piece of that velvet shirt. It's kind of the stitching, and that will be part of my fringe. And then this is just a piece of crochet, probably a doily or a runner. It's kind of an ecru color. I'll put that probably down first. Lay this. I'm getting it laid out before I glue it on so that I know where I want everything for sure. Here I have some more pieces of scrap lace. Now I have a 25 cents, some ribbon that I thrifted. I always look at the ribbon when I go to thrift stores. And I will use some ribbon. These are approximately my fringes. I want them all different lengths, but about 10 inches to a foot long. So I'm just going to cut off some ribbon. And I also have, this was sort of an upholstery fringe that I bought in a giant bolt for a super good deal, and it's lasted me forever. And so, you know, that's just kind of out of the expected, just a little chunk of fringe like that. And that's why I like it. Now I'm just going to take my time. Now that I have it sort of laid out the way I want it, I'll only sew on a couple pieces at a time. So maybe I'll sew this lace on. Or not sew, glue. So used to sewing everything. And maybe these little pieces of lace next to that one. And now I want the pink kind of on top because it goes so well with the flower. Trying to avoid getting glue all over my fingers. Unavoidable. And now I'm going to make a little spot for this ribbon. You know, you can glue jewelry, braids, whatever you want, whatever style you're going for. Now I'm going to take this chunky one, I'm going to put it off to the side. So I'm going to add a pretty good size glob of glue. Okay. Now I'm going to add a strand of pearls. Now this I'll hand sew, and I'll show you what I do with that. Okay, so here's what my fringe is looking like. Now I'm going to take this necklace, and I closed it up, and I want it to drape with one end higher and one end lower. So about like that. And I will lay it on here just slightly above that fringe so I have a spot to sew without running into the glue. And I will just pick a spot, and I'm using the gold thread, go in from behind. You can go in from the front as well, I guess. Let's see. And I'm just picking one spot, and I'm just going to sew that end securely. And then when I get that sewn, now this will be covered with flowers. So instead of draping my thread across the back, I'm just going to scooch over here and do the other end. And I'll probably stitch that about 4 times. No, I probably should have done white. It would have been less conspicuous on the very back where you will see. So anyway, that's how you learn. Okay, so this is what it's looking like so far. Now it's time to add the flowers. Okay, so this you just kind of have to eyeball and figure out. Yours will be a little different than mine. So you kind of position your flower, what you want to be the top. And I want this glued about right here, towards the top a little bit and off center to the right, because these two little guys are going to come down here. So I am just going to stick a glob of glue right here. The glue's not coming out so fast. Okay, so I have a glob of glue. Now I am just going to take my flower and eyeball this so I have it where I want it, and just hold it on there till it sets. Okay, now that's glued pretty securely there. I think I'm just going to put another dab of glue sort of underneath here and just press that down and hold that secure as well. Okay, so I have a little bit of space here for these two flowers. I think I'll put the glue on these little ones on the flower. I'm being very generous. And I want one sort of low, and I'm going right over top of those pearls. And I will hold that down in place till it sets. Now I have a little spot left in here. Now on this one, I think I'll put the glue on the felt. You know, you just kind of feel it out and see what works for you. And just going to press and hold. Okay, there it is. I trimmed a little bit of the lace. It was too long. We got the little brooch clip in back. And wouldn't this be beautiful on like a pink tweed jacket or any color you want? Okay, now I'm going to show you in a little while how to sew the flower. Say you want this attached permanently to the jacket. You know, you machine sew the fringe, hand sew the pearls, and then I will show you how to sew a flower to fabric, like if you're doing a purse or if you want something permanent. Okay, so the choker that I was wearing at the beginning of the video, super simple, same concept as the other flowers, except for this one, I used black lace that was from a thrifted dress, and I find black lace dresses all the time at thrift stores. Now I wrote down the dimensions. I cut a piece of lace that was 3 inches wide by 35 inches long, and I did not fold this one. I just sewed all along the bottom, the basting, so I could pleat it, make the circular pinwheel sort of, and sew it. And then I used a ribbon that is 1/4 inch wide and 65 inches long. And I didn't sew the flower in the middle. I sewed it, this end is longer, and I sewed it 26 inches over from this end. And you just put it on and you wrap it around. Oh, and I sewed it. I sewed it to the ribbon. It's not a brooch or anything. Just some simple sewing. And you have kind of a fringy choker. Fun, fun. I would probably just double knot that and let the fringe hang. So here's another fun idea with a jean jacket. Now this could be a blouse, a top, a tank top, put a big flower. I'm going to add this big denim flower right here. Now I already made this and it's just sewn in the back. And what this is I had another tutorial where I cut off the bottom of a dress because I made a duster. And so this is not folded over. This, I wrote the dimensions down. Okay, so the strip of fabric that I used to make this flower was 4 inches wide and 64 inches long and not folded over. You see, I have sort of the hem right here as the edge of the flower. And same concept as I did the other flowers. Now, the only difference on this is I'm going to sew this to the jacket, and I saved that for you because I want to show you how I sew these on to the actual garments. First thing I'm going to do before I take it off my mannequin is pin it where I want it. You know, whether you hang it on a hanger and eyeball it, sometimes it's easier to know what looks best if you have it hanging in some way, either on a mannequin or a hanger. And I will put another pin right here and then take it off my mannequin. I'm choosing the thread to hand sew this. I would love to match this exactly, and I don't have that color blue. I either have like a dark royal, which I think would really stand out. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this gold. Gold hides very well in a lot of different colors. Okay, so I am going to start in the center, and I will just go underneath the jacket, find the center. Now for the denim, I would try to use like a dress or a shirt where the fabric is thinner, because this is a lot of layers. If you use like a thick denim jean, you might be struggling with getting this needle through. Okay, so I will just do the center until I feel it's secure. You know, maybe at least 5 or 6 times. Okay, I'm putting the last stitch in the center. Now I'm going to look at the back here. Now the next place I want to stitch is towards the top, which would be like way up here. So I am going to tie this thread off right here because I don't want a long thread just kind of hanging there. You know, it could get damaged or caught. So if I had a small flower, you could just switch to the next spot. But since this is so big, I'm going to tie this off right here before I go to the next spot. And I just make my loop and do it 2 or 3 times so that it's extra secure. and then move on to the next spot I want to sew. Okay, so here's the center that I just sewed. Now I'm going towards the top, and I am going to sew right here through all 3 layers. I'll start underneath, pull it up, and do the same thing as I did the center. And when I'm done with that one, I will go to about here, go to the bottom, and then over on this side. And probably through all 3 layers here, 2 layers here. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. I will sew it so it's secure. How cute is that? It took practically no time. That black choker necklace, under 15 minutes. This a little longer, but not much. I mean, how fun. Okay, so I want to show you this long, fun necklace, kind of boho lagenlook. And I'll give you a close-up and show you what I did. Okay, all I did here was this whole necklace piece is a piece of off-white bedsheet, and it is 1 inch wide by 94 inches long, and it comes all the way down to here. Okay, and then I just decorated it. I'll get into the flower in a little bit here, but I just basically put little patches all over it, and then did 2 rows of zigzag stitching to hold those patches on. So here I have a piece of lace, doily. It's about this long. Here I have a little piece of toile with a little boy's face. Over here, from here to here, I have a piece of this brocade ribbon. And down at the bottom, I have a little patch made out of this old duvet cover. And so with the zigzag stitching and the patches, it decorated this part of the necklace for me. And then I made a knot right where I wanted the flower to go. And now I will come in closer and show you how I made the flower. Okay, so this flower is fairly simple and rustic, and it is a brooch. And I could have just sewn this on to the necklace, but I wanted it to be a brooch, so I can show you some other things you can do with this sort of brooch. Okay, so I used the shot glass for this one to outline that felt for my pattern. And then I added some pieces of lace. I glued it to the felt, kind of like we did the other one. One is 13 inches long and this one is 10 inches long. Okay, and so how I made the flower was I took that bed sheet, that off-white bed sheet, and I cut a strip 39 inches long and 5.5 inches wide. Okay, and now this one I did fold, but I want to show you first how I burned it. Now I just have a candle on a cookie sheet, and this is not as big as the piece I cut for my flower, but this will be my example, okay? So I just run it through the flame. And I have it on a cookie sheet because once in a while you got to put out a little fire. Now this will add interest and color to the edge, but plus it'll help stop fraying. Okay, and so I will do that to both sides. And that big one that I did this morning, it did not set off my smoke detector. I was afraid of that because my honey was in bed and I could see him panicking, but it didn't set off my smoke detector. This one I could do a little more. Okay, you get the point. Okay. So once I had both edges burned on this flower, I folded this one over. And remember, this is the 39 inch by 5.5. I'm just showing you on this little sample piece. So I did fold it, and the raw edges are on the outside, whereas the pink velvet, we had the folded edges on the outside. This time the raw edges are on the outside, and I will fold this over and do that base stitching down on the fold all along here, scrunch it up, swirl it, sew it, and then glue it on to the felt and the brooch pin. And then I just pinned it onto the necklace. Okay, so here's what the flower looks like not on the necklace. And you could pin it onto anything that you want, a hat, a belt. This is a fabric belt. I see that all the time. Flowers on belts now, or even a tie belt, hats. It's really endless. Okay, so next what I want to do is I showed you that little black choker. Now let's make a choker with satin ribbon with all the hardware and everything, and you will be surprised at how easy it really is to do. Okay, so to make this choker, I'm going to use a satin ribbon. It's 1 3/4 inch wide. Now that definitely could be less, like an inch. This is just what I have, and it's gray, and I have some gray lace from a past project. So I already made the flower, but I'll go into detail about how I made it. So the first thing I want to do is take you could use your ribbon even if you want, but I'm going to use a tape measure and measure my neck. And I had 13.5 inches. Now I'm going to cut my satin ribbon at exactly 13.5 inches. Okay, so this end is done, and I'll show you what I did, because what I'm doing next you do to both ends. Now I am just going to take my glue gun, and I'm going to put a skinny little thread of glue right towards the end, and I am going to fold this over quickly, 1/4 inch. Okay, and now I still have sort of a raw edge, so I want to do it again. So right below that fold, I put a line of glue, and I'm folding it over another 1/4 inch. Just press it for a second till it sets, and I have what looks like that at both ends. This needs a little more glue, it looks like. Okay, so I got this little set on Amazon, and I'll put the link in my description. It was $9.79, and it is pinch crimp ends for bracelets and chokers and things like that. And it comes with these sort of crimping ends, comes with little chains, silver and gold, and it comes with jump rings and lobster claw clasps. And I'll show you how. This is so easy. I actually just learned it myself, and if I would have known this years ago, I probably would have been making a lot more chokers. I'll show you how to put this together. Okay, so I'm going to be using, these come in 3 different lengths in this set. I'm using the longest one since this is so wide. I already have one attached, and now I'm going to attach one to this end. And basically, it has little teeth in there and a little clip for rings. I am just centering it. Now I have a wire cutter, let's see, a wire cutter and 2 jewelry making pliers. Now this is kind of big for jewelry making, it's just what I have, but I will put a link in my description to a set of 3, or any craft store will usually sell these in sets of 3, 2 small jewelry making pliers and a wire cutter with it. But okay, so I'm taking one of my pliers, and I have this just resting over the end, and you just simply go in here and squeeze that shut. Now the closer I get to closing it, I'm going to make sure that that fabric is lined up here. And you just kind of squeeze tight, come to the other end, and squeeze that tight. How easy is that, right? Okay, now what I need to do, so this is what it's looking like. There's chain that comes with this kit, these jump rings, and this lobster claw clasp. I am going to take one of the little silver jump rings, because I'm using silver, and there's a little, it's not a full circle, there's a space in the end to open it up. Now I'm going to open it up, put the chain on, and attach it to the end and close it back up. Now I just butt those two little pieces together. Okay, so now we got that. And so for the opposite end, I want the clasp. So I'm going to take one of those jump rings, open it up, put the clasp on there, and then attach it to the other end and close it back up. Now we have a functional choker. Now let's decorate it with the flower. Okay, for this flower, it's just sewn, it's not a brooch. I started with a piece of lace that is 38 inches long and 4 inches wide. And I'm going to use this one for my example. And I folded it and folded the corner and did that whole basting stitch along the raw edge down here because we have the folded edge on top. Did the swirl and the sewing and created the flower. Okay, so I held this choker up to my neck and played with the flower to see where I want it positioned, and I want it off center. And I stuck a pin where I want the flower. Where you want it is completely your choice. So what I'm going to do is in that area, I'm going to put a nice glob of glue and attach the flower. Now I'm going to hold that securely until it sets. Now if you want, you can either sew or hot glue some embellishments in the center. Glue holds these embellishments pretty good. I know that from my curtains I have hanging behind me. I glued a lot of those embellishments, and boy, they're hard to get off. Sometimes I want to steal from it and use those embellishments on projects, and they're hard to get off there. So clean that up a little bit. And there I have a beautiful choker. I'll put it on for you as soon as I clean it up here. Okay, isn't that cute? All right, if you're into these flowers, you might want to stick around for the slideshow. I have a lot of pictures. I've put flowers on just about anything you can imagine. Journals, purses, hats, scarves, tops, skirts, pants. But I'll show you a slideshow of all of that. Thank you so much for watching.